Hey, good. No.
You going to Schwab?
No, different camp.
Huh?
A BIM camp. I'm going to a different camp. The Glassman's opening the place. They're not opening. Let's go. You ready?
So you stayed all summer?
Till last night. Good.
Bruchim Aboim, Shem Irgen Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Zev Shlita on Shir Kloli B'dina Ikar V'Tofel, challenging Ikar V'Tofel questions. We would like to have the great schus of sponsoring a shir called Irgen Shir Torah at 718-851-8651.
First, it's good to see your faces once again. Shachiyana v'kiyana v'zman hazeh, der b'shalaf m'shirov be gesund and stark, l'orech yamim toivim. Today I want to share with you a fascinating shayla. I guess we could say it's a curse of toiv to Bariyam, that we're all healthy. Ein toiv al Torah. I started with 3 simple questions, and it launched me into a sugya, beautiful sugya, an ikar v'tofel. Here's the question. Someone had chocolate-covered almonds. That was his mashal. And of course, the almonds is a bar priya eitz. And then inside, on top of the almonds, there's a sesame coating. And then there's a chocolate. So he told me that he thinks that the ik is the almond, because after all, that's a fruit. So he'd make a bar priya eitz. The problem is he first sucks the chocolate, like a candy. Then he gets to the sesame, and then he gets to the almond. So do you have to make 3 brachas? It might be one if you eat it as one, if you chew it up all together. But here he's sucking the chocolate separately, then the sesame, and then the almond at the end. Doesn't sound right. Then we had a really interesting shayla, someone that sucks sunflower seeds, garinim called. And he's an interesting person. He likes the taste of salt. I'm not, encouraging that, but he sucks the salt, and then he gets to the sunflower seed. Do you have to make first a shackle on the salt and then adama on the sunflower seed? And then another question, someone had a very hot and spicy food, and today there's new meaning to that. I think it was a vegetable or whatever it was, and then he grabbed a cup of soda to drink, and he didn't make a bracha. And someone says, where's the bracha? You made adama on the vegetable, how could you drink the soda without a bracha? Ikar v'tofel. Someone says, ikar v'tofel, if you drink it separately. So as we'll see, we have many more, but we have to really clarify today, Bez Hashem, one simple yisoid. The klal is, the Gemara says in the beginning of Keitz Mevorach and Daf Lamed Hey and Brachis, Asa vayla adam sheyena vayla mazeh b'loi bracha. A person is not allowed to have even the most minuscule hana from the Bari Olam's world without a bracha. The Gemara says if someone does, it's ki'ilu ma'al. So now we have a very obvious question. Even a granule of sugar, a person needs a kolshu of sugar, you have to make a bracha. So now the shayla is, how does ikar v'tofel work? Let's talk about a hamish ikar v'tofel. He has a potato latke that's adama, and he puts applesauce. So you make adama on the latke, and a pot is the applesauce. Question, how are you eating the applesauce without a bracha? You can't even have a granule of sugar without a bracha. How could you have applesauce? Or let's say more of a contemporary mashal, French fries and ketchup. So you make a dam on the French fries and no bracha on the ketchup. Ketchup is hano. The truth is, the original ikar v'tofel is maybe a little easier to understand, because you have a cake, a typical cake has 2 or maybe 3 ingredients. You have flour, mezainis and shackle, sugar, cocoa. You put in peanuts or raisins, so you're showing have 3 or 4 brachas. So there at least it became one food. But here you put ketchup, that's chayiv and a bracha, on top of a French fries. Why are you eating the ketchup without a bracha? Why are you having the apples without a bracha? But the emes is, when you learn the Gemara, you'll see the kasha is even stronger. Because the emes is that the 2 ikar mekayros of ikar v'tofel are in a very extreme way. And let me give you a little background. In those days they had, we're going to refer to it as a salty fish, but it was really a salty fish that you couldn't eat it plain. If you ate it plain, mamash, a person couldn't go on. So the derech, after you ate this salty fish, you took a piece of bread. So the shaila is, first you ate the salty fish, and then you ate the bread. The question is, do you have to make a bracha on the bread? So we would say, what's the shaila? The Gemara says in Brachas Lamavavam at Beis that if you have a cereal that has flour and honey, Zok the Gemara, even though the honey is the Ikar, but you make a mezainis on the cereal. Why? Either the honey is the Ikar, Kol sheyesh by chameshes minei dagin, mevarchen olav bari minei mezainis. And that's the Kapaskin in Shulchan Aruch, Reish Ches Beis, Reish Ches Tes. In other words, if you have a mixture that contains mezainis, chamesh minei dagan, it's automatically mezainis. So, oy bazoi, if you have a honey cereal, you make a mezainis because it has flour. So I ask you, Kolshkein, if you have this salty fish and bread, you can't ignore the bread. You can't even ignore flour, Kolshkein, bread, the Kodesh HaKadoshim of all foods. You wash and you bench on bread. Avad, you don't ignore it, right? Wrong. Let me tell you a Mishnah. The Mishnah in Brachas Mem Dalid, Heviu lefanav meliach betchila. We'll soon see what the wording tchila is. But they first brought him this salty fish, upas imai, mevarich ala meliach, upoite es hapas. You make a shakel on the fish and no bracha on the bread. Why? Shapas tfeilaloi. It's pilaployim. Even flour doesn't become bottle. How does bread become bottle? So the Mishnah Vayistachais is concerned about that. Ze'aklal. We'll soon see what that means. Ze'aklal. Kol shu ikar ve'imai tfeila. If you have a primary food, in this case it's the salty fish, and a tafel, the bread, mevarech ala ikar upaites atveila. Tosfos points out, avad we know ikar v'tafel, but this Mishnah is being mechadash. Even if the pas is a tafel, you ignore the pas. But now we're really confused. How could this be? Why is bread a bottle? But more so, how does a yid take a piece of bread, and we'll soon see even a kazayas, even a kabeya, and eats it without a bracha? How do you eat that bread without a bracha? But the question is even stronger, because shimu suchi nafshechem. The Tosfos Yom Tov on the Mishnayos, on this Mishnah, asks the question, why does the Mishnah say tchila? Heviu lefanav miliach tchila. So he says, you know what the pshat is? I'll tell you. Let's say a person has his salty fish and he has his bread ready, and he decides to eat bread first. So really the bread is a tafel, but now he's eating the bread first. Zok the Tosfos Yom Tov that if you eat the bread first, you have to make a moitzi on the bread. Why? Because how are you going to eat bread without a bracha? So then he says something. You see a Godl's approach. He says, I have a problem with my pshat. Because the Chumas Hadeshin, we'll soon see in Siman Lamed Aleph, says, if you eat the tafel first, you have to make a bracha on the tafel. But he doesn't bring a raya from this Mishnah. If my pshat is right, why didn't he bring a raya from the Mishnah? Must be my pshat is wrong. Now the average person, he says a pshat, he says, but, no one else says it, Mokum enichul limin hashamayim. La'ani is daiti, or some people mean la'ashira is daiti. I got a pshat that no one thought of. He says, if the Chumas doesn't think of it, it must be wrong. So he negates the pshat. So what's tak of pshat? Meliach tchila. So he says an unbelievable pashtus. Because the Mishnah means you first eat the herring. And then separately you eat the bread. And even that, there's no bracha on the bread. A yid picks a piece of bread, eats it, no bracha rishayna, no bracha achrayna. Zok there, you don't have to have koirach, he used that mush. You don't have to have the herring with bread on top and bottom. It could even be first herring, the salty fish, and then the bread, no bracha on the bread. In other words, the bread is not baked with the salty fish. It's not like cake. It's not like French fries and ketchup together. Nothing doing. First the salty fish, and then the bread. And this chiddush is get paskin in Rav Shulchan Aruch and our Sim Reish Yud Beis, the Mishnah Berurah, the Chayodam. So now in this simple Mishnah, we see 4 chidushim. First of all, it's not cooked or baked together. It's not even eaten together. And the biggest chiddush is even pas is bottle. Also, if you eat the pas first, you make a bracha. And this is all in Shulchan Aruch Reish Yud Beis Sif Aleph. The Mechaber brings two of the Chedushim, there are more as the other two. But now we are thoroughly confused. How could pas become a tafel? Why pas after the herring? There's no bracha, it's not together. And the same bread before, you do make a bracha. But the emes is, the plot thickens. Because the second source in Shas of Ikar v'Tafel is the Gemara. In Brachis, Mem Aleph, Amid Aleph. And again, a little history we have to know. Those days they had obviously a very sharp radish, a sharp tznoin. So much so you couldn't eat the tznoin and finish the meal. You had to eat a zayis and olive afterwards to sort of neutralize the strong taste of the tznoin. So the Gemara says, Hayu lefan of tznoin v'zayis, mevarach ala tznoin u'poites azayis. Think about this. A yid has a zayis, one of the shivas haminim. He doesn't make a bracha. You make a dama on the radish and no bracha on the olive. Zok the Rosh in Siman Chavav, and that's sugya. Even if you first eat the radish and then separately eat the olive, no bracha on the olive. What's going on here? Zayin minim is bottle? So the emes says, if bread is bottle, why can zayin minim be bottle? And Rashi spells out, because the zayis is only there to neutralize the taste of the tznoin. I use a word, because I think it's a good word. Just like by the salty fish, the bread, you're not really eating the bread because of bread. There's like a fire extinguisher. You can't deal with all that salt. Now we have another example of a fire extinguisher, ground that happens to be an olive to neutralize the radish. But here we see again the same yesod. You're eating a zayis separately, not together, not like latkes and applesauce, and no bracha. But I'll tell you another example. A chiddush of Ikar v'Tafel. We do it every single day. You wash on bread in the morning or for supper, and you don't make a bracha on the other foods. Why not? Why is no bracha on the farshbais, on the soup, on the main course? So that's the Gemara in Bracha and Malach and Beis, because the pas is the Ikar and pat is other foods. Again, you're eating pas separately, other foods separately, and there's no bracha. I'll give you another example. You go to a kiddush in shul, you make a gafen on the kiddush wine, then you drink soda or coffee, and you don't make a bracha on the drink. Why not? Zoktamar and brachas mem aleph, it's Shulchan Aruch kuf ayin dalit, yayin poite kol minei mashke. What does that mean? I didn't mix the soda with the wine. I first drank wine, and then I have soda. What kind of mechutin is it? So bishleim, the conventional Ikar v'Tafel, you take a piece of cake that has flour and sugar and raisins or nuts. No, we could understand. But how does this work? So here I'm going to tell you a beautiful question. And once we have the answer to that question, we're going to go through literally tens of different shaylas. What's takib pshat and Ikar v'Tafel? We know it, we know all about it. How does it work? So I'll tell you two possible pshatim. Maybe the simple pshat is Chazal required a bracha on the main food. Tafel is not the main food. Maybe there's no bracha on tafel. It's like, it's like bittul b'roiv. Well, tafel is bottled to the Ikar. If that's true, there's no bracha on the tafel, then I could understand everything. Because even if you first eat the salty fish, and then you eat the bread, but at the end of the day, the bread is a tafel. Chazal were not mechayiv a bracha on tafel, period. Doesn't make a difference how you do it. Oh, if you eat the tafel first, we'll soon see why, but there's no bracha on tafel. But that's illogical. Because if asa lehenais b'olam hazeh b'loi bracha, you can't even have a granule of sugar without a bracha. How could it be that a tafel there's no bracha? How could a piece of bread be less than a little bit sugar? Maybe the pshat is a lot more meaningful. If you have an ikar v'tafel, we look at it like one food. So Chazal said, on one food, there's one bracha. Just like no one thinks on a piece of cake, you make a mezainis, and a shackle, and an eitz on the raisins. It's one piece of cake, one bracha. So in other words, it's not the pshat that tafel does not need a bracha. The bracha on the ikar goes on the tafel. So I'll tell you, that pshat is right. Ibayis ein mikra, ibayis ein mesvara. Ibayis ein mesvara, it's just logical. How could a person eat a tafel without a bracha? It makes no sense. It must be that the bracha on the ikar goes on the tafel. The bracha on the salty fish goes on the bread. The bracha on the tznoin goes on the zayis. But even more convincing, ibayis ein mikra. Look at the Lashon HaMishnah. Dr. Moshe Chazanish and many other Gedolei Achrayim. It doesn't say there's no bracha on the tafel. Kol shu ikar, b'yimay tefeilah, mavarich ala ikar, upaitis atfeilah. The bracha on the fish, pat is the bread. And we could add, just like yayin paita kol mine mashka, does not mean that you drink wine, and you don't need a bracha on the coffee, because coffee doesn't need a bracha. It's illogical. The gofen, patis or mashka. The bread, patis or meal type food. Ikar v'tafel, poites atfeila. But we could do better than that. And now let's apply it lemaisa. Let's say a person he buys this salty fish, and the bakery is closed. He doesn't have any bread. There's no bread to be found. So he decides to brave it. He's going to eat the salty fish and hope for the best. He makes the shackle on the salty fish. No bread, hafal, he'll have to manage. After he ate the salty fish, someone comes to the house, I have a present for you, a loaf of bread. Yeshua. When he takes that bread to eat, does he have to make a brach on it? So we would say, what's the shayla? It's a tafel. But Zok the Mechab in the end of Kuf Ayin Zayin quoting the Sefer Pardes. No. If when you made the bracha on the ikar, there was no tafel, and you didn't anticipate having a tafel, you have to make a bracha on the tafel. But the Mechabes is a much bigger chiddush. Mechabes, let's say you wash on bread, and there's no butter in the house. So you say, okay, fafala. After you made a moitzi on the bread, someone brought you butter. So you smear the butter onto the bread, and guess what? You have to make a shackle on the butter. How you talking? So the Mechabe, pashit. If the b'shas you made the bracha, there was no tafel, the bracha didn't go on the tafel. So Grada Ramah says generally a person has das for tafel, he might get it. But Lu Yitzur, we could say they made a bracha on the ikar and there was no das on the tafel. Zok the Shulchan Aruch, you have to make a bracha on the tafel. Zok the Heilige Chazanish, the Emin Simon Chav Zayin, he mamish asked our question, how could it be ikar v'tafel, no bracha on the tafel? Zok the Chazanish, the pshat is the bracha on the ikar pat is a tafel, and his raya is this mechaba. Because if the pshat is on a tafel, there's no bracha, period, it's unimportant. So who cares if the tafel came later? I ate the salty fish, I need the bread, now I got the bread, so it's a tafel. What should be a difference? The teretz Zok the Chazanish, ikar tafel works that the bracha on the fish potted the bread. But if you thought that you're not going to have bread, there's no pottering, and you have to make a bracha on the tafel. But we could do better. Let me ask you a very tricky question, so please think. A person on a strict diet, and he has the covered the Rosh Chodesh, a cheese Danish that's exactly a kazayis. Perfect. He measured it, Chazanish said this is a kazayis. So you ate the cheese Danish with the achilas pras. What bracha achrayna do you make on that cheese Danish? So you're wondering, what's the shayla? It's a certified kazayis. The question is, in a cheese Danish, I told you, there's a percentage of cheese in it. Now, I've noticed it's katnu hadoiris, it's getting less and less cheese, but there's still some part of it that's cheese, right? Even if you hold that all the cake ingredients counts towards the kazayis, like the Mishnah Berurah says, Agam Moshe Feinstein, the Rav says it's a minik toist. But even if you count the cake ingredients, but no one knows you count the filling, cheese or pie filling. So now we have a problem. I said exact kazayis of cheese Danish, but let's say 10%, whatever, 15% is cheese, doesn't count. So now you have less than a kazayis of mezainis. So what bracha do you make? So the Paiskim say, and really it's a Beferish Mishtabur and a Sharat Tzion, that in that case you'll make a bar nefashis. You'll add them up. It's not enough to make an al michya, but you have a kazai to make a bar nefashis. Now someone asked, but how could you make a bar nefashis doesn't pata al michya? Teretz is an ochiv al michya. Question: if we hold the tafel doesn't count, it's not on the map. So how do you count it into the cheese Danish? And this is another raya that the yisoid is that there is a chiyuv bracha on the tafel. The bracha on the ikka pat is the tafel. Oy bazoi, in this case of the cheese Danish, since there will not be a bracha on the ikka, because you can't make an alamichya, what do you have to do? You have to make a bracha on the tafel with the ikka. There's a beautiful tshuva from the Plotsky Goyin in Meshivas Nafesh, Chelik Beis, Siman Hey. He mamish discusses the shaila. He has, if you have a kazayis and part of it is the ikka, part is the tafel. So he was a Goyin Oilam. He says, maybe you compare it to Hilchas Shabbos, that the ikka, the tafel is bottled. But then again, he says, we don't say that if you have a tafel ingredient that's stray, you're allowed to eat it because it's bottled in the ikka. He says, it must be the pshat is that the bracha on the ikka goes on the tafel. But if there's no bracha on the ikka, you make a bracha on the tafel. So this raya is a beautiful insight. It's shaykh, you can make a mezainis on a food and a bar nefashis. Why? Because the only reason there's no bracha on the tafel is because the bracha on the ikka went on it. If there's no bracha on the ikka, you make a bracha on the tafel. Next question. Someone asked me this question. He has an ice cream cone. Now, I'm not getting into the bracha on it because that's a different shir. But he told me he likes the ice cream cone better. He makes a mezainis on the ice cream cone. Because the ikka is the ice cream cone with the flavor of the ice cream. Okay, a lot of paiskim argue, but this is what this paisik said. Okay. But then he said, I have a problem. I don't want to eat the ice cream cone first. Then it's going to drip all over his shirt. So he first licks the ice cream, and then he gets to the cone. Do you make a bracha on the ice cream? He's eating plain ice cream, probably kazai is a plain ice cream. So he was mechaven to a Trumas Hadeshin that we mentioned earlier. Trumas Hadeshin says if you eat the tafel first, you have to make a bracha. Zok the Levushay Mordechai in Tinyana Siman Lamed, he was asked a fascinating question I'll soon get to, but he mamish has this shaila. Is the pshat ikka tafel that there's no bracha on the tafel doesn't count, or the bracha on the ikka pat is a tafel? So he says it's pashit that a tafel needs a bracha, but the bracha on the ikka pat is a tefela. And he has one of his beautiful rayas is the Gemara says in brachas, it's kepaskin the Shulchan Aruch, if you eat food just for a fuah, person has an upset stomach, he drinks prune juice. Even though he's only eating it for a food, he has to make a bracha. Because you can't have a no without a bracha. So how could you eat a tafel without a bracha? Must be, pshat on ikka v'tafel is the bracha on the ikka, pat is the tafel. Says Levushay Mordechai, oy bazoi, I understand. If you decide to eat the tafel first, there's no bracha on the ikka. How can you eat without a bracha? You have to make a bracha on the tafel. He says, but if you hold there's no bracha on tafel, lo yeida, I can't understand why to make a bracha on the tafel. Now we would have thought, what's so schwer? If you're eating the tafel first, it's not a tafel. But he says no. From this halacha itself is muchach. That's the way it is. Now there's a lot more to say, but we have a big agenda. But if someone wants to look into sugi a little more, the Kajigulav and Eretz Tzvi Siman Kuv Zayin, Rab Leib Malin and Mamash Siman Aleph for the Seifa, Rav Moshe Chelik Dalad Membei, the Psiala Chachma, Vov Peiches, Lairas Nosim Dalad Yud, and Rav Sternbach Gimel Samach Tes, all have this chakira with various nafkaminis. Haroitza, who wants to enjoy Olam Hazeh, Ayin Sham V'Timtza. But let's apply it more specifically for our questions. Okay, let me start off with an interesting shayla. Someone who's from, usually from becomes krum pretty quickly, and he has a latkes with applesauce. And he makes a dam on the latkes, and he says, I can't just eat applesauce without a bracha. Rebbe, I'm making another bracha just for you on the applesauce. Makes a shackle or eights, whatever he makes. So that's not from, that's krum. But the Mr. Brura in Kuf Samachesiv Cotton Mem Gimel says, if you make a bracha on the tafel after the ikar, even if you took it out of the mixture, it's a bracha levatala. But how about this question? He's from, but not as krum. He decides, you know what, I can't just eat applesauce out of bracha. He first takes a spoon of applesauce, makes a bracha, and then he eats the latkes. So the Paiskim say, that's an avla. That's goyer and bracha she'ein tzricha. V'ed gebeten. Who asked you to be so from? Eat the latkes with the applesauce and make one bracha. Now, it's still bad, but it's not as bad as the bracha of Atola. It's goyer and bracha she'ein tzricha. My question is, what's the difference? In both cases, he makes two brachas. Lefid vareinu, it's masuk midvash. If someone makes a mezainis on a piece of cake, and then he says, Rebbeinu Shalom, you deserve another mezainis, he makes a second mezainis. That's not from, that's ultimate krum. Because you made a bracha, right? So another bracha is a bracha of Atola. Well, guess what? If you make a hadama on the latkes with applesauce, you made a bracha on the applesauce. Mevarech al ikul pait is a tefillah. Now you decide to be krum and take an applesauce, you already made a bracha on the applesauce. That's a bracha levatol. But let's say the person takes the applesauce first. It's not a tafel yet. Now, he could have avoided it, so it's an avla, but that's goyer and bracha she'ein tzricha. So the two sound similar, but are very different. Question, a bacha asked me, a bacha mola yerashamayim. He had to take a certain pill, a certain medicine, and he took the pill with orange juice. So he once discusses in a shir, Tais and brachas, that memhei, and that's pashat halacha. If you take a pill with water, you don't enjoy the water, you don't make a bracha on the water. If you take a pill with anything but water, you make a bracha on the beverage. The question the bacha asked me, but why? The ikka is the pill. The juice is a tafel. Why should I make a bracha on the tafel? I said, very nice question. But there's no free ride for a tafel. Why is there no bracha on the tafel? Mevarech ala ikka, upait is at tvela. But in this case, there's no bracha on the pill. You have to make a bracha on the juice. But we could do better. Let's say today they started making it, and this is a pleasant tasting medicine. Great tasting antacid, vitamins, whatever it is. So let's say there's 90% of the medicine and 10% flavoring. So a thinking person asked, do you make a bracha on this? Down the hachi, that 90% is medicine, there's no bracha, but 10% is regular flavoring. That's why, of course, it has to be kosher. It's real flavoring. Do you make a bracha also 10%? So the emes is, someone said no, because the flavoring is the tafel and the ik is the medicine. But that's wrong. Because there's no bracha on the ik, you make a bracha on the tafel. And that's why some paiskim say, if a taka has a good taste, you have to make a bracha. Forget it, ignore the medicine, you make a bracha, it's the flavoring. Even a granule of sugar, kol shkein flavoring. Those paiskim hold you don't make a bracha is not because it's a tafel. But they hold that oichel umashka lerefu, you make a bracha. This is not oichel umashka, this is medicine. Chazal did require bracha on medicine that there's a flavor to offset the bad taste. That's the chap. But no one says it's ikkiv tafel because it's not ikkiv tafel. Because if there's no bracha on the ikka, the tafel requires the bracha. Beautiful shayla. A person had a mezainis cereal with milk, and obviously a mezainis cereal, you make a mezainis only and no bracha on the milk. But when he finished the mezainis cereal, on the bottom of the bowl, there's still a significant amount of milk remaining in the bowl. There's no cereal left. So of course, when no one's looking, he picks up the bowl and slurps up all the milk. Okay? Question, do you make a bracha on that milk? So the truth is, that milk is no longer a tafel. Because there's no cereal. Bishleim, when you have a spoon, milk and cereal, you could say it's a tafel. But this milk is plain, and it's a very tasty milk. It has all the flavoring of the cereal. How could you drink that milk without a bracha? If you drink milk, you make a bracha, how could this be different? The teretz is chas v'sholem. You're not drinking the milk without a bracha. You made a mezainis on this bowl of cereal. It potted the milk. That milk has a bracha. Tak, if you take another cup of milk, you have to make a bracha on that, not on this remaining milk. In other words, even if the person drinks the milk because he enjoys it, not because he's worried about Bal Tashchas. Enjoy Gesundheit. It's not a stira. You made a bracha on this milk, and therefore there's no problem of Hana B'loi bracha. Question. Someone ate salty fish in his house, and then he walked out of the house, he went to daven mincha. Then he came back, he wanted to have the fire extinguisher, the bread. Do you make a bracha on the bread? It's the same ikar v'tafel. He had asked to eat the bread. Zok Toisvis in our Sugidaf Mem Dalid, if you made a shini makim in between the bracha of the tafel and then the ikar, you have to make a bracha on the ikar, on the bread. On the tafel, I'm sorry. It's the same tafel, but for us it's masik midvash. The reason why there's no bracha on the tafel is the bracha on the ikar went on it. But if you made shini makim, you lost the bracha on the tafel. The bracha on the ikar is gone. Zok Tais, Mr. Brewer quotes this in Sif Cotton Dalid. If you made a shini makim between the ikar and the tafel, you have to make a new bracha on the tafel. The same is true if a person made a bracha on the ikar and made a bracha achrein and then wants to have the tafel. A good mashal. Someone made kiddush and shul, drank revius of wine, and then he could drink soda, milk, or coffee without a bracha. But he decided to make an alagefen. He's afraid to forget to make an alagefen. So he drank kiddush wine, made alagefen, and then he wants to drink other drinks. You have to make a bracha on it, because you terminated the connection in the ik and the tafel. Now someone asked me a good question. Let's say, same case, I made a bracha on the salty fish, and then I spoke out before I ate the bread. Do you have to make a bracha on the bread? Shini Makam does, but it's a toyis. Shini Makam does because you lost the whole shackle. If you speak out after the shackle, you didn't lose the bracha. You're allowed to eat other foods. So it's only when you lost the connecting bracha, then you have to make a bracha on the tafel. Now I just want to remind you what the Ramah says, that generally you always have in mind the tafel, even if you don't have it in the house. If we say make a bracha on the tafel separately, it's only if you have no das on the tafel. Question. Someone had salty fish and had no eitzah, nothing else to eat with it. Then afterwards he went out and he bought cheese to neutralize the salty fish. Does he have to make a bracha on the cheese? Well, we would say, what's the problem? It's same shackle. It's not like bread. So Dr. Chashochan and Siv Gimel, it makes no difference. If you have no connection to the ikar, you have to make a bracha on the tafel. It could be the same shackle. It makes no difference. Question. Someone made a shackle on his coffee, and unfortunately to him there was no sugar available. The sugar ran out. So you say, okay, he'll drink coffee without sugar. He makes a shackle on coffee. Someone comes running, I just bought sugar, take some sugar. Does he have to make a bracha on the sugar? Like the Mechaber, yes. So here I saw an interesting chiddush. The Chutshani in Chelik Beis, Amud Shin, and Rav Moshe in Yeridei Dalad Mem Ches Hey come out to the same thing. That enochanami, if you have a tafel that you didn't anticipate having after the ikar, like the bread that you didn't plan on having after the herring, you make a bracha on it. But if you have a tafel that you mix into the ikar and it becomes one, then it's one. Then you have to make a bracha, even if you didn't anticipate having the sugar. Now, what's really interesting of Shlomo Zalman and Shmir HaShabbos, in the Chayla Gimel Eisaf, is the end of Perek Mem Ches. He has this shaila, and he says, wait a second. If we understand, the way Erlachid has to understand, that eating without a bracha is a gzeila mo'al, there's no din bittul by gzeila. So who cares you mix the sugar into the coffee and it became one? It's not bottle. There's no bottle by gzeila. You would have to make a bracha on the sugar in that case. But lemaisa, as I told you, Rav Moshe, Rav Nissen Karel would say you don't, and could be the svar is, once it becomes an ikar v'tafel, it is bottle. And if it's bottle, there's no chiyah bracha. If there's no chiyah bracha, there's no me'ila. Listen to an interesting question. Someone had raisins and peanut combination. So I want to remind you, I've heard this once and I'll never forget it, all nuts are 8s except peanuts and donuts. There's a lot of lumdus to that joke, because all nuts grow on a tree. Peanuts is not a real nut. It grows in the ground. That's why Pesach we eat all the nuts except peanuts. What do you have against peanuts? It's not a nut. So peanuts are really like donuts. It's not a nut. So Bekitzi had peanuts and raisins. Okay? And he mixed them and eats them together. Well, he takes a handful, raisins and peanuts together. What bracha do you make on that combination? So we would say, wait a second. Even if you like peanuts more, but this is Shivas Haminim, raisins is grapes, you don't just ignore it. Is that true? That it becomes the Vadai Ikar? Chas v'shalom, it's Keneged Aferish Gemara. Because the Gemara says that the bracha on the Tznoin, Patas the Zayis. Zayis is also Shivas Haminim. Teretz is only Chameshas, mean a dogon that's not bottled. So that's one big yisoid. If you like the peanuts better, you make Adama and ignore the raisins. But listen to a golden Rabbi Akiva Eiger. I mean, every Rabbi Akiva Eiger is golden, but this one you could appreciate, even if you're half asleep. The question is, how does this work? You're making an Adama on a peanut, and that patters a raisin? Adama doesn't patter 8. In that case is good. You make Adama on the peanut, patters the raisin. Wonderful. Let's say you like better the raisins. So what do? Only 8s and no Adama. The question is, how could the 8s on the raisin patter peanuts? 8s does not patter Adama even b'di'evet. I'll say, what about Ikar v'tafel? Doik v'tishkach. Every Ikar v'tafel, the bracha on the Ikar could work for the tafel independently. Lamashal, the case of the Mishnah, shakel on the fish, patas bread b'di'evet, right? There's bracha on the tznoin hadama, patas or 8s. But how do you see that a bracha 8s could work for a hadama? Zok Rabbi Akiva Eiger on the page. This is a Beferish Mishnah. Anui boyis ehi mikro. Listen to a goinis. The Mishnah says such an astonishing example of Ikar v'tafel. A bracha on fish, shakel helps the bread. Wow. Then the Mishnah says, Zeh haklau, unbelievable. Kol she'ikav de bracha. What do you need that for? What's the Mishnah adding? If bread is potter, what's the Mishnah adding? Zok Rabbi Akiva Eiger, the Mishnah is adding Ikar v'tafel works across the board. Even if you made an 8s on raisins, it goes on peanuts. If you'll ask me, what's the svara? You say svara. Because it's not the pshat that you're eating peanuts without a bracha. If you have a raisin-peanut combination, it becomes one food. What's the proper bracha for these peanuts? 8s. So it's the right bracha. If you pick up a peanut and make 8s, you're not yaitza. But in raisin-peanut combination, the bracha is Bayer Priya 8s. Question. Someone had a lokshin and cheese, or spaghetti and meatballs, was not together. He had a kazayas of lokshin and cheese, a kazayas of peanut, of spaghetti and meatballs. Do you make 2 bracha achraynis, ala michya for the lokshin, and bar nefashis for the cheese or the meatballs? The answer is no. Why? Because if it's an Ikar v'tafel, let's look at another Ikar v'tafel. When you make a guffin on wine, you pata the soda. What bracha do you make on the soda? Nothing. Or better yet, the ala geffen patas. The bracha on the bread patas the meal. Zok the mechaba by Yosem Reish Yud Beis, Ikar v'tafel works both ways. You pata the bracha rishayna and pata the bracha achrayna. The original question that we began with, someone ate a hot and spicy food, let's say a hot and spicy vegetable, and then he grabbed a drink without a bracha. He was right. That would be a typical case of Ikar v'Tafel. That's not different than the Mishnah. It's like a fire extinguisher. The only thing is, if he had no das whatsoever to have a tafel, that we learned, you have to make a bracha on the tafel. But this person who's daring enough to eat these foods has that in mind. Now let me tell you a fascinating shayla. A person went out and bought salty fish, lekavet chalamoid sukkis. As soon as he wants to dress sukkis. So he sits down, he makes a shackle, then he takes the bread, because you have to eat bread, you can't eat plain salty fish, right? Do you make a bracha on the bread? Avada not. Someone asked the Madarav, the Levushim Mordechai, okay, you don't make a bracha on the bread, but do you have to eat the bread in the sukkah? He's eating a kabeya of bread. So he says, oh, that's a beautiful question. I'll ask you a better question. Let's say he's an interesting person. He had the salty fish Pesach by night, and then he grabbed the kazayis of matzah. Is he yotzei the mitzvah of matzah? You're not making a moitzi on it. Or let's say on the Shabbos he eats salty fish, then he grabs a kazayis, a kabeya of bread. Is he yotzei suda Shabbos? So here we have a new shayla. Ikar v'Tafel works for the bracha. Does Ikar v'Tafel work to pater from sukkah? Because fish is pater from sukkah, bread is chayiv in sukkah. So he got it before Rav Moshe's tshuva. He has the same chakira. What's the pshat Ikar v'Tafel? And he says it must be, like I told you earlier, the bracha on the Ikar paters the tafel. But there's no such thing that a tafel doesn't need a bracha. Zok the Madarav oy bazoi. It paters brachas, but it doesn't pater chayiv sukkah. So you're going to have a modnei chatimtza. He's going to make a shackle on the herring. He can eat it in his house. Then he has to go in the sukkah and eat the bread without a bracha. But you haven't seen anything yet. Forget about sukkahs. Let's say on a Sunday morning you buy the salty fish and you have the bread with it. And you have a big salty fish, so you're going to eat a kabeya of bread. Do you wash netilas yadayim on a kabeya of bread? You're not going to make a bracha moitzi. Do you wash on it? So, the Ramah in the Tshuva Siman Aleph discussed this with Chachmei Brisk, he writes. It's interesting. He writes with such bittul. He says, how could I say something? I spoke to you. I'm in such an awe of you. So Vaisachos Brisk always had that dominance. He said, I can't say anything, but he had the shayla and he discussed it with them. And they brought a raya for Rabbeinu Yoina. This Chachmei Brisk. Rabbeinu Yoina says that if you eat bread before the salty fish, you have to wash the Netilas Yadayim. So there must. I don't think the raya is a good raya. If you're having the bread before the salty fish, it's not a tafel. Why do you have to wash? But in my case, he says, I think you don't have to wash. If the bread is bottled, it's bottled on Netilas Yadayim. Now this I found hard to understand, and I'll tell you why. If you tell me that tafel doesn't count, and that's why you don't have to wash, the same should be true regarding sukkah. Maybe the Ramah held that the pater from sukkah. But I fail to understand how you could make a chiluk that you're chayiv in sukkah because there's no p'tur gabi sukkah, but why you chayiv, why you pater Netilas Yadayim? And it's interesting, the Magen Avram Bayos quotes a shlah that if on this bread that you eat with the salty fish, you don't make a bracha, but you have to wash. And the Mishnah in Kuf Nun Ches Sif Kat Yud is machma like this. That I could understand. The tafel is part of my bracha, chayiv in sukkah, and chayiv in Netilas Yadayim. But I wonder, like the Ramah, that you pater from the Netilas Yadayim, l'chayra, there's no way to understand that you pater from sukkah. Now, I want to tell you what I thought of, which is not true, but I'll tell you why it's not true. But first tell you what I thought of. Did you ever wonder the most obvious question? If you have a honey cereal, that the ik is the honey, you make a mezainis, because kol sheyesh b'chamesh min hadagan is not bottled. That's basic halacha. How could it be then that if you have bread with herring, with salty fish, you don't make a bracha on the bread? That's also chamesh min hadagan. The teretz is that the case of the bread with the salty fish is not even a taste. It's not like in the cereal that the honey gives taste and the flour gives taste. This is a tafel gomor. I use the word a fire extinguisher. It's a chetimtza. There's no kavanas achila. Oy bazoi. it's not on the halachic map. It's not a food. You're eating it to offset the saltiness. So such a bread doesn't need a tilas yadayim. It's not for kavanas achil tafel gomer, right? But if that's true, and what about sukkah? So I would love to hear from the Olam a svara why the Ramah says you potam tilas yadayim. Maybe the Ramah takel you potam sukkah also. But how do you make a shpalt lo zachisi lahavim? But we could do even better. Listen to this fascinating shayla. Someone was served carrot salad. Okay, so far pashat halach adama. But the Bnei Abayis put in chunks of mango to give a little tam. But the bracha, the Rav says, is vadei hadama. But he realized this is the first time in this season that he's having mango. Now I'm not getting involved, yes shechianu or not shechianu. He makes a shechianu on new crop. And this mango is new crop. Do you make a shechianu on that mango? Or someone asked me, like a real story, he had a cheesecake that had a topping of slices of kiwi. And for him, the kiwi is a shechianu. You're not going to make a bar pri-eitz on the mango or the kiwi because it's bottled. But it's the fresh crop. What would you say to that? So I say it's not a shahila. Because the reason why there's no bracha on the mango is not because it doesn't count, because the bracha on the carrot patters. But here there's no pattering for shechianu. So therefore, Charisha make a shechianu. I'll say, how could this be? I'm making a shechianu, no bracha. People do it all very often. Rosh Hashanah night they make a bar pri-eitz on the Shiva Saminim, and then they make a shechianu on the shechianu fruit. What's this? You don't need a bracha rishona for the shechianu. The only thing is the logistics of it. If you're going to pick up the mango, just mango alone, so then you're making it ois ikavatof. So pick up the mango with a little bit carrot, make a shechianu, and live gesund tehet. Fascinating shayla. Someone made gofen by kiddush, then he wants to have coffee, and he brach on the coffee of adanat. But he's a patzait shiyid. He doesn't drink coffee with sugar. He takes a sugar cube, puts it in his mouth. The problem is, even if yayin patters coffee, it doesn't pat the sugar cube. That's an eichel. Do you have to make a bracha out the fact that it's a sugar cube? It's an eichel. So you'll say, "What? Why are you being so stingy? Why can't it patter both?" And I'll tell you more so. L'chayra, you could be a lamdan and have four different brachas in one food. You could have a mezainis cereal with a blueberry, with a piece of banana or strawberry, and milk. So you think about it, and one bowl of cereal you have 4 different brachas. Mezainis, eitz, adam, shakel. What bracha do you make on that bowl of cereal? 1 mezainis and you're a tzaddik nizgav. No reason to make 4. Now I want to make 4 brachas, right? So why can't it be that the pat is the coffee and the sugar cube? But it's not a raya. Because when you have a bowl of cereal, it becomes one food. So then the bracha, mezainis goes on all 4. But here, I'm not making a bracha on the coffee. I made a bracha on the wine. Yayin poita mashka, vi kommt es to the sugar cube. So this is what's called in the Paiskim a tafel l'tafel. It's not like 3 tefillim with Ikar. Here, the wine patters the coffee, but vi kommt this to the sugar cube. So listen to a beautiful Shilti Gibayrim in Brachas Daf Chavtes Ois Beis. Again, a little history you have to know. They had sharp foods. They had sharp wine, they had sharp radishes and sharp salty fish. But the Shilti Gibayrim talks about a drink, a wine that was very sharp. And they had to eat a vegetable, anusi. Anusi is anis in English, sheves. It's like a vegetable spice. After they drank the sharp wine, they had to have this anis, this vegetable. Zok the Shilti Gibayrim, drink the wine and then eat the spice without a bracha. Why? Because it's a tafel. You're eating it afterwards. It's no different than the Gemara in Brachis Mem Aleph with its 9 and the Zayis. But that's not a right to our case. That's a regular kafetafel. But the Magen Avram in Kuf Ayin Dal, the end of Sif Cotton Test, quotes this and says more so. Let's say someone drank wine, made a guffin. Then he drank a very strong shakel beverage. Do you make a bracha on the shakel beverage? Absolutely not. But then he needs something for the strong shackle beverage, so he takes the anis. Zok the Magen Avram, no bracha on the anis. Why? It's a tuffle. Oh, this is not a regular tuffle. This is not a tuffle to the wine. This is a tuffle to the sharp drink. So from the Magen Avram, we see tuffle is also potter. So we'll say the sugar cube is a tuffle to the coffee, which is a tuffle to the wine. But you know what's interesting? Mavaldik is a better word. The Magen Avram has a raya to this tuffle. And that brings us back to our original Gemara. We mentioned the Mishnah that you make a bracha on the salty fish, that pot is the bread. But when you learn the Gemara with Taisis, and you look at the Taz and Reish Yud Beis, you'll see it as clear as day, that originally they made a bracha on a Perus Genoisa, a very powerful fruit. It was so sweet you had to have a salty taste to neutralize the sweetness. So then they took a piece of salty fish. But then they were overwhelmed with the saltiness, they took a bread. So Zok the Magen Avram, there you got it. Midin HaMishnah, Midin HaGemara, tuffle works. As I state in Magen Avram. So we see Midin HaMishnah, tuffle works. But we could do better, Tyre Yidin, because we have twice a year, and if you live in Eretz Yisrael, once a year, tuffle. What do I mean? Pesach by night. We don't make a bracha on the Mara, even though it needs a bracha, because the bracha on the Karpas, part is the Mara. Frag dich sam soif in the Tshuva Siman Mem Zayin, but where's the bracha on the Charaisis? Even though you shake off the Charaisis, but you have some time of Charaisis, where's the bracha on the Charaisis? Zok dich sam soifa, the Charais is a tuffle to the tuffle. The bracha on the Karpas part is the Mara, and the Mara needs a tuffle, the Charaisis. And therefore, Zok dich sam soifa, our original question with the sugar cube. You make a guffin on the wine, that part is the coffee, and the coffee part is the sugar cube. The bialacha in Kuf, Zok the bialacha in Kuf Ayin Dal Tziv Beis, but if you take the sugar cube first, you have to make a bracha because it's a tuffle. But this is interesting. I'll tell you in Eretz Yisrael, the Kishayla, and in America we don't relate to this, but this is halacha. I understand. Adayim Hazeh. You go to a kiddush in shul and you eat cake and makam suda. Then they give you a rishalmi kugel with a pickle. Now I never figured out the science of it, but the pickle is a tuffle to the rishalmi kugel. There you have a tuffle. Beautiful. The point is very simple, because that's really what it is, a tuffle. But the most challenging question we'll leave for last, and that's this question now: what happens when you have a tuffle first? For example, like we started, a person has an ice cream cone, and he decided it's a mezainis. It's yitachin, it's two bracha, but he makes only mezainis. But he eats the ice cream first. Do you make a bracha on the tuffle? Or a chocolate-covered almond, like I told you in the beginning. Or the sunflower seeds that he sucks the salt first. So the emes is, the Mishnah, the Chayr speaks about this. The Mishnah says you ate the salty fish, tchila, and then the bread. And yet it works. But there's a big makom l'chalik. If you first had the tuffle, the salty fish, then you could say the bracha on the fish went on the bread. But here it's just the opposite. You're having the tuffle first. He's licking the ice cream first. He's having the chocolate first. Where's the bracha on the ikar? And if you said that, Baruch Shekivanta to the Trumas Hadeshin in Siman Lamed Aleph. He has this shaila, about interesting shaila, that person drank wine in the morning, but he couldn't drink it on an empty stomach. So first he ate berries, and then he drank the wine. So he says, you don't have to make a bracha on the berries because it's a tuffle. But he says it's not true. You're eating the tuffle first, you make a bracha on the tuffle. As they state in Trumas Hadeshin and in Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah and Reish Yud Beis Aleph quotes this. The only question is, I'm leaving for later, a different time, if you're making a bracha on the tuffle first, what bracha do you make on the tuffle? The original bracha, appropriates, or maybe since it's a tuffle, you make a shackle, which is very totally in our chakira. If a tuffle doesn't count, so when you make a bracha, so make a bracha shackle, not more. But if your bracha on the tuffle is because of the ikar, and here there's no bracha on the ikar, you have to make a bar priyates. But here, the Trumas Hadeshin says this clearly. You make a bracha, if you eat the tuffle first, you make a bracha on the tuffle. Now, in this case, I think, the ice cream, they licks first, it's not a goyim bracha she'en tzricha. He wants to be minayish, he wants to eat the ice cream first, then the cone, you can't eat the cone first. If you want to suck the chocolate first, that's your eating habit. Like the Ritva says, the Paiskim say, if you really should make a eitz, a mezainis, eitz, hadam, and shackle. Let's say someone comes to a meal, he first wants a cup of coffee. He's allowed to. You're allowed to follow your eating habits. So I don't think it's a problem. He should make a shackle on the ice cream, and you get to the cone, you make a mezainis. Again, I'll give you a Yishalmi marshal. All the earlier Paiskim discussed this. They were very poor in Eretz Yisrael. They didn't have sugar. So they took a raisin, put it in their mouth, instead of a sugar cube. So Rabbi Yashiv and Mr. Karel both discussed this shaila. To make a shackle on tea without sugar, it doesn't have any good taste. Maybe you don't make a shackle on it. To put the raisin in your mouth first, that's a tough before the ikka. You should make a bar pre-eitz. So they say put the raisin and drink the tea together with the raisin. So then both the raisin and the tea is a shackle. Why is the raisin a shackle? Because the raisin is there to give the taste to the tea. The sunflower seed shaila, I mean, again, a person eating salt, it's interesting, the achila, but the Shulchan Aruch and Reish Dala Aleph says beferish. If you have salt, you make a shackle in Bavari. So if a person enjoys sucking the salt off the sunflower seed, he has to make a shackle first, then he makes adam. If someone, like most people, crack the sunflower seed and some salt enters his mouth first, that's incidental. That's probably there to flavor the sunflower seed, and that you could ignore. The licking of the ice cream is the same thing. He's having a tuffle first, and therefore you make a shackle on the ice cream, you get to the cone, you make a mezainis. That's pashut. The chocolate-coated almond or raisin is a big sugya, because Mr. Burr seems to say the bracha only on the eights. Some people say today the chocolate is the ikka, some people say two more brachas. I'm leaving that for a different share. But one thing I will say, if someone decided that by me the ikka is the almond, the chocolate is flavoring the almond, and he eats it all together, make bar pre-eitz, you pack the sesame seeds and the chocolate. But if someone first sucks the chocolate, then he has to make a shackle. Then you take out the almond, of course when no one's looking, and make a eitz, and eat the eitz, but you can't patter it even though it's a tuffle, because the tuffle is first. A beautiful sugya, which again is a part of a different share, but I want to mention one point of it, is those that have a lunch, they have to have something very filling and nutritional. They want to have cheese or salad, cold cuts, but it doesn't go plain, so they take a cracker together with the cheese or fish or meat. So that's pashut. If you have a cracker with any topping, any dip, any spread, you make only mezainis. Pashut. But here it's fundamentally different. The ikar is undoubtedly the topping. That's your lunch. The salami, the gefilte fish, the herring, especially herring. The cracker is there to give tam to the herring. What do you do? So to make a long story short, the Paiskim say, the ikar is the shackle. You have to make a shackle. But chamesh mina dagin is not bottle. So you have to make two brachas. As I stated, he says shulchan, and Mr. Burr says it come out beferish. But here it's probably a better eitzah to make first the shackle on the herring and then on the cracker. Why do I say that? Because maybe taka, the cracker is so important that you don't make a shackle on the herring. So to make a mezainis and then a shackle is maybe a suffix brachal of atala. But if you take the herring first and make a shackle, you can't go wrong. Because you had the tuffle first. Then you can make mezainis where you get on the cracker. And let me leave you with a word, remember for Parshas Vayechi, but it's the side of our sugya. The pasuk says in Parshas Vayechi, Naftali ayola shlucha, hanoisen imrei shefa. Naftali's godless was that he has this imrei shefa. Zok Rashi, what is imrei shefa? Rashi says his godless was that he had Peres Genoisa. What's the godless of Peres Genoisa? But the kash is stronger, because the Targum says, you know what the godless of Naphtali Peres Genoisa? Because they make a bracha on the Peres Genoisa. Shail is, what's the godless of Peres Genoisa? You make a bracha on it? Otherwise you don't make a bracha? Zok the Ritva on Brachis. Our Ritva, Daf Memdal, the Shita quotes it. It's unbelievable. Because Peres Genoisa is such a powerful bracha that you eat Peres Genoisa first, that pot is the salty fish, and that pot is the bread. That's the godless of Peres Genoisa. Aguten Tag to you. I'll do it afterwards.
Shame English. I'd like to thank Rabbi Smith for the wonderful shir. Whoever wants to sponsor shir, please call English Church 718-851-8651. Rabbi say next week Sunday we're going back to the regular time. The shir will be 10 o'clock in the morning. 10 o'clock next Sunday. The daily shir tomorrow Monday the shir will be 1:30, but Tuesday we're going back to 1 o'clock. Tomorrow Monday is 1:30, and Tuesday we're going back to regular time 1 o'clock. Aber gaan we naar Kashem met Kosh Baruch Zag, so the Gibber mit mit schöner Mann drauf mit Zit Jagel Teil Viade Kadish. Amen. Amen. Hey, Shmei, Rabba, Mavorach Ramo, my God. The Sikkim will be shortly. In any minute we'll start the Sikkim of the Shir. Rabbi said the Samishum Be'ezus Hashem is starting in 2 weeks in Borough Park, Williamsburg and Flatbush. Alle da sein gesund und stark.
1 minute. 1 minute, yeah.
Yeah, right. This is the same story. She's like, they like both. So he says, then you make two brothers. Yeah. You have a little.
Yeah, Moshe is awesome. If you
no, never let it. No, if you actually, because a lot of kids put them down in the milk because they want to.
What do you say about the coffee, the sukkah versus the lamb? You know?
If they say it is not many chashivas, plates, so you don't wash out his eyes. Many chashivas they can pass.
That's what you do watch. You make it wrong. That's what you do watch.
No, but they have a kasha to say. It's not going to be for mitzvah.
No.
The first time I don't wash out his eyes. A pass kibetz.
Wash on
True, but it has to be a chashivas. I mean,
not to mention that you don't even pasta wash. You didn't wash until you were wash.
Wasn't it the last thing you said that about the herring and the cracker that it's...
That's part of the difference here, but what I want to say is one food, that's one brother. And take it to talk about one food. The exception, there are two big exceptions, will be a different gym at the show. The chocolate covered raisins, the sugya, and this crackers. You know you can hear this? With herring, make a shaka, right? People take a cracker with it. What's the effect? Yeah? I don't mean herring. Everybody's in the herring. Maybe it's 10 different herring. So the is the herring. So then you need, so the cracker gets topped. Right? So here, when kosher is basically the dog when it's cooked together. Here it's two separate foods.
No, what's the difference between the alkaline and the salty and the tough?
That's a tough gummer.
what's the difference?
You can't eat it. You couldn't eat it with. You couldn't go without eating something yet. Our herring is not as salty. I'm not a herring.
Then when they ate the bread, then they ate the difference.
You asked a good question. You asked a very good question. A toffel gummer is butter. A toffel is not butter. Also, in the case of the Gemara of the cereal, it's cooked together. Here it's not cooked together. It's two separate. That's possible.
Because they have a refrigerator and freezers. They used to smoke it so much, so it became a stick.
They had pears that you couldn't eat plain. Wine could drink.
The guy thinks to buy salty herrings. They used to.
How are you? Baruch Hashem, how are you? I was here a couple of weeks ago where you gave on
Last one took the place. Mom told me last night. Mom paid it back. No, for Shraga, for last one. No, hopefully Shraga it's only the first one. Yeah, for maybe. Hopefully. Sharatayra, Tarvadas, Gretzky.
Wait.
He called me last night late at night. I couldn't answer. I was sick. 2 people called me last night. Yes.
You gave a shir a couple of weeks ago on Grumma by Mazikin.
Right.
So I want to give you and I walked out very shaken up. What happens, which is part of the course in Borough Park, I have a driveway, and someone parks his car by my driveway, and I have to go to the airport. And I can't take my car out. And I have to hire a car service.
Let him pay for it.
So he has to pay for it.
Medina Shemayim for sure. He's not a mazik, but Medina Shemayim for sure. What did he tell you?
No, I just I want
Absolutely, Medina Shemayim. Simcha, ready.
So Medina Shemayim you have to pay also. In other words, yeah. I know Rabbi Horowitz lived on my block from the Aguda.
Yeah.
Someone blocked his driveway, and he called the police.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Very good. You could have him towed. Simcha, ready?
Okay.
You're right. What? Very good. But what's the Ikar? Very good. Because it's Makam Suda, halacha day. Then it's pata. Tafel. You never finished them. I had to get ready.
Okay, but it's a machlokes whether the shears, the Ikar, or the Sikum is the Ikar, the Tafel, but it's Nimna Vagamru that God Alim and Jamaica de Maisa. Sikum.
Just the chazor we learned today, as we see Asala Henais by Lamazeh B'lei Bracha, the Aleph is no hana without a bracha. How do we understand Ikar v'Tafel, and especially the extreme Ikar v'Tafel that you have a Ikar and then a Tafel separately and there's no bracha on the Tafel? So that's the unique Havana of Ikar v'Tafel. It's not that there's no bracha on the Tafel, but the bracha on the Ikar patters the Tveilah. So if it's a food combination al pi halacha, it's one food. And as we say, one food requires one bracha. So it happens to be that the shackle on the salty fish patters the bread. And I should have mentioned, salty fish is just what the Mishnah's term, but does not apply to our herrings today. Our herrings, even if salty herring, are still edible as it is. It was an extremely salty fish that was inedible as it is. You needed the bread to neutralize that. Again, salty fish meant an extreme example of salty fish. But the Chiddush of Ikar v'Tafel works so much that even after the Ikar, as long as the Tafel is functioning as a Tafel, like we said, a Tafel Gomer, it's sort of a fire extinguisher, if you want to call it. It's not Kavanas Achila, it's gepatet with the bracha on the Ikar. Snoin, and then afterwards Zayis, even though Zayis is Sheves Haminim, it's included in the bracha. The aside of Ikar v'Tafel even works for bread. Even though Chamesh Min Adagan is not bottle, that's because it's there for Achila. But here the bread is Mamish a Tafel Goma, and therefore it's gepatet. The reason why you make a Maitzi on bread, a patas other foods, is Ikar v'Tafel. The reason why you make a guffin on wine and patas other beverages is like the Gemara's Lashon, Poite kol minei mashka. If there was no Tafel b'shas the bracha on the Ikar, according to the Shulchan Aruch, you make a bracha on the Tafel later. Ramah says, but if you had das on it, even in a remote das, it's enough. But basically, Ikar v'Tafel has to have a bracha on the Ikar pattering the Tafel. If you had a kazayis of a cheese danish or a pie, exactly a kazayis, since it's not a full kazayis of flour, you would have to make a mezainis takus. The Ikar is chamesh min adagam, and a bar nefashais, because the Ikar and Tafel both count. If someone has a Tafel first, it's a garim bracha shein tzricha, unless he has a reason that he wants to eat it as such. But to make a bracha on the Tafel after the Ikar is a bona fide bracha levatola. A pill that a person drinks with juice, takes with juice, you make a bracha, even though the juice is the Tafel, but if there's no bracha on the Ikar, you need a bracha on the Tafel. Flavored medicine is a machlekes hapaiskim if you make a bracha, but it's not because the flavoring is a tuffle, because this tuffle does not have an ikka to fall back to. Leftover milk and cereal, or leftover ice cream and ice cream cake, or pie, filling in pie, is included in the original bracha. You're not eating without a bracha, it's included in the original bracha. If a person made a bracha on the ikka and made a shinu makoim, you have to make a bracha on the tuffle. Or he made a bracha achrayna on the ikka before the tuffle, he has to make a bracha on the tuffle. If he spoke out after eating the ikka before the tuffle, then there's no need for any new bracha, because the bracha rishayna is still in existence. If a person added sugar that he didn't anticipate adding to his coffee, most poskim feel, even though it's a tuffle after the ikka, but since it integrates and it liquefies, it becomes one with the coffee, a bracha is not needed. A person had a spicy vegetable and then he grabs a drink, there's no bracha on the drink. That's mamish a tuffle of the Mishnah. Bread that is potter because you're eating with very salty fish, we saw is chayiv and sukkah, and it's machlokes hapaiskim if there's a chayiv natilas yadayim, if you have a kabeya. And I wonder, is there any svara to mechalek that sukkah is chayiv, natilas yadayim is potter? If you have a tuffle food that's a shechiyanu, even though you don't make a bracha on the tuffle, you could make a shechiyanu. Wine patters coffee, which patters the sugar cube. Like the karpas patters the mara, that includes the charaisis. That's the tuffle, which works. Just like the case of the peres genaisa patters the salty fish, which patters the bread. Cake, and then rishalmi cooked with a pickle is also tuffle. A tuffle that's eaten together with the ikal mashal, the raisin, the sweeten, the tea, is all included in one shakel patters that all. If you suck on the sunflower seed or the ice cream before the ikka, you can make two brachas. Unless you crack open the sunflower seed, that would be only hadama. Raisins and nuts that you ate together, you make one bracha. And I should have mentioned, even though you had a kazayas of raisins, but if you like the nuts ikka, you make hadama and barnafashis, no ala geffen, no ala eitz. And as we saw, the pshat and the pasik, peres genoisa has a powerful potential in its bracha to pata bread and pata fish. Yes.